All right, let's dive right into this explainer. If you've ever found yourself totally lost in the weeds of historical theology, wondering how all the different biblical descriptions of Jesus' death actually fit together, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're unpacking a meticulously structured model from our source material that doesn't just pick one atonement theory over another, it actually builds a single cohesive mechanism.
So, what are we really looking at here? It's the ultimate question the source material tackles. How exactly does the cross save? We all know the baseline claim that the cross brings salvation. But how? Does it pay a debt? Does it defeat evil powers? Does it just offer a moral example? For anyone who wants a faith grounded in solid, logical coherence, understanding the how is absolutely critical. What you should take away from this isn't just a list of theological vocabulary words, but a literal working mechanism of redemption.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to build this model layer by layer, almost like a house. We'll start with 1, the blueprint, which is the dilemma. 2, the foundation, or the supreme agent. 3, the pillars, integrating the core motifs. 4, clearing the debris, addressing those distortions. 5, the roof, which is universal reconciliation. And finally, 6, stress testing, where we'll tackle the major objections.
Let's start with part 1, the blueprint and the atonement dilemma.
You know, historically, theologians have fiercely debated these concepts. It's kind of like a tug of war. One camp firmly argues it's all about legal substitution, right? While another insists, no way, it's all about Christ's cosmic victory over darkness. But our source material points out that pitting models like penal substitution and Christus Victor against each other, well, it just yields a distorted picture. The blueprint here is all about unity. It's about creating an integrated framework where every major biblical strand interlocks perfectly. It explains not just that Christ's death saves, but how it systematically addresses guilt, bondage, and cosmic estrangement, all without a single contradiction.
Moving right along to part 2, the foundation, which looks at the supreme agent framework.
Okay, so the absolute crucial concept here is something called the Shaliach. In ancient Jewish agency law, this is a supreme agent who acts with the sender's full legitimate authority. Think of it like this. They accomplish the sender's will. They speak their words, and they can even bear their title. But, and this is a huge qualifier for the source's argument, they are never confused with the principal sender. This actually grounds a very early pre-Nicene view of Christ, where the absolute Father commissions the perfectly obedient Son. Basically, the New Testament's atonement logic is agency logic. The Father is the absolute prime mover, and the Son is the supreme agent dispatched to get a specific mission done.
And John 6:38 brilliantly illustrates this foundation. I have come down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. This shows that the true value of Christ's work flows directly from who he is, as that perfect agent carrying out the absolute Father's mission. He's not just acting on his own initiative out there, he is perfectly executing a commission. Actually, every single aspect of the atonement we're about to look at is simply what this supreme agent does on behalf of the absolute Father.
Now let's build on that with part 3, the pillars, integrating the core motifs.
Under this specific framework, every single major atonement motif is just part of the supreme agent's commission from the Father. It's pretty amazing how it fits together. Christ recapitulates the human story in perfect obedience, exactly where Adam failed. He offers himself as a cultic, sacrificial satisfaction for cleansing. He stands legally in our place, bearing the penalty, that's penal substitution. And by doing exactly that, he secures Christus Victor, defeating cosmic powers. He pays a ransom for our liberation and finally achieves restored peace through reconciliation. They aren't competing theories fighting for the spotlight. They are sequential dominoes falling perfectly into place.
The text uses Colossians 2 to show exactly how these pillars connect. And honestly, this is a massive aha moment in the paper. It says, having canceled the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands, he disarmed the rulers and authorities. So why exactly are the dark powers disarmed? Because the legal charges are gone. With absolutely no juridical leverage left, the cosmic accuser literally has no accusation to make. And with no accusation, they have zero dominion. The legal substitution directly causes the cosmic victory. How cool is that?
Next up is part 4, clearing the debris, looking at the distortions to leave behind.
First off, this model completely rejects medieval Anselmian mathematics. Instead, it goes for a strictly biblical Levitical understanding of a qualified obedient sacrifice. If you've ever heard the argument that a sin against an infinite God requires an ontologically infinite victim, well, the author points out that this is essentially 11th century philosophical math. It's not a biblical framework.
The actual biblical logic, especially when you look at Hebrews, is all about qualified obedience abolishing the sacrificial system. It has absolutely nothing to do with metaphysical calculations.
Furthermore, the author firmly, and I mean firmly, rejects the idea that the Father turned punitive hostility toward the beloved Son. Instead, they argue that wrath was abolished by the law's curse falling on the representative's flesh. This is a profoundly important distinction. The substitution is real, for sure. The legal penalty is real, but the Father is not emotionally angry at the Son. The law's curse is executed on the flesh of the substitute, which legally extinguishes the debt. Meanwhile, the Father's love for the Son actually intensifies because of his completely obedient self-offering.
All right, it's time to put the roof on this thing. Part 5. The roof. Universal reconciliation and scope. The author here argues for objective universality. This means the cross legally encompassed absolutely everyone. But there's also conditional appropriation, which means individuals must still enter into it by faith. Basically, because the representative bore the penalty for all of humanity, the legal ground of wrath is objectively removed for everyone. Boom, done. However, an individual must still subjectively enter that reality through faith. If they don't, they experientially remain in a state of enmity. They feel this relational pressure that is actually designed to eventually drive them toward that faith.
And this naturally leads to universal reconciliation, beautifully captured in 1 Corinthians 15:28. When the Shaliach mission is fully completed, the Son hands the kingdom back, and the absolute Father is glorified as all in all. The author asserts that this isn't just some vague possibility. It's the promised, guaranteed completion of the agent's mission. The cosmic reconciliation is finalized, the structural hierarchy of Father and Son is perfectly maintained, and the ultimate eschatological goal is officially achieved. Finally, we have Part 6, Stress Testing, where we are answering the major objections. Of course, any good model needs to be stress tested. A major objection comes right out of Isaiah 53, which says it pleased the Lord to crush him. Now, this seems to imply the Father actively directed wrath at the Son's person. Critics will say, if the Father isn't angry at the Son, why does the text literally say it pleased the Lord to crush him? You know, this is widely considered the absolute strongest text for classical retributive penal substitution. Well, the author resolves this by showing that the Father's pleasure was actually in the joy of the accomplished redemption, not in some emotional anger toward the Son. We have to draw a line here between the ultimate willing cause and the proximate efficient cause. The paper uses the book of Acts to show that while God's ultimate plan willed the event, it was lawless executioners who acted as the efficient cause. Think about it. The pleasure in Isaiah 53 is the exact same concept as the joy set before him in Hebrews 12. God willed the glorious outcome, not an outpouring of divine animus against his agent. Okay, here's another intense objection. Jesus' explicit use of the phrase eternal punishment in Matthew 25:46. It's a tough one, right? If universal reconciliation is the roof of this whole framework, how in the world does it survive texts that seem to promise endless, never-ending retribution?
The paper counters this with a genuinely fascinating historical fact about the Greek language. The word Jesus used, kolossus, was actually understood by ancient audiences as a horticultural term. It meant remedial pruning. Aristotle himself actually drew a really sharp line between two distinct concepts here. Timoria is retributive vengeance just to satisfy the punisher, but Jesus didn't use that word. He used kolossus, which means a temporary pruning in the interest of the sufferer. It's meant to correct and restore them. Therefore, this age-pertaining punishment is totally remedial, designed to eventually bring the unreconciled into the objective reality that Christ has already secured.
The final major objection we'll look at today comes from Hebrews 1:8, which challenges the Arian Christology by calling the Son God. So if the Father alone is the absolute principle and the Son is merely the agent, how do we handle texts where the Father addresses the Son with divine titles?
The source explains that Hebrews 1 is actually quoting Psalm 45. In that context, Elohim is used as a representational title for a Davidic king exercising delegated authority. This perfectly matches the Shaliach framework we talked about. In Jewish agency, the supreme agent legitimately bears the sender's title. Plus, the very next verse in Hebrews explicitly says, God your God has anointed you. This proves that even while holding this highly exalted representational title, the Son still has the Father as his own God. It seamlessly aligns with the exact blueprint we started with.
So, after examining this meticulously built framework, what do you think? Does this integrated model completely solve the complex atonement puzzle? Or does a perfectly logical system still leave room for divine mystery?
We've seen how agency Christology provides a rock-solid foundation to link substitution, cosmic victory, and universal reconciliation into one beautiful, cohesive mechanism. The source makes a really compelling case that by clearing away the medieval philosophy, the biblical texts just naturally interlock. But hey, theology is vast. Review the logic we've walked through today and ask yourself, how does this framework impact your own understanding of the cross? Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep learning.